Okay, resumiendo, summarizing. I'm going to do this bilingually because I think it's faster than if I try to type it. Lo voy a hacer bilingüe porque creo que es más rápido que si trato de escribirlo. La idea de crear el canal YouTube, the idea for creating the YouTube channel, I'm going to be clearer about the corruption part that I put in the description regarding what happened on YouTube. Voy a ser más claro con respecto al uso de la palabra corrupción en la descripción de los videos. Vamos a ponerla acá también. Okay. There's not just me, but a group of Argentinians in these Falkland Malvinas groups. Several, and we've talked to each other already about it, that are being suspended with continuously, one time after another, to the effect of maybe barring you from participating on Facebook for 4 months in a row. Hay un grupo, no solamente una persona, pero somos varios, ya nos hemos hablado, nos hemos contactado, de miembros en estos grupos de las Falkland Malvinas que están siendo suspendidos en continuación por periodos que te prohíben acceder a Facebook de 4 o 5 meses. And what I mean by corruption is that they, for some reason, without getting into it, whoever's doing it, whoever's responsible, a lo que me refiero con corrupción es que por algún motivo, quien sea que lo esté haciendo, está eligiendo de reportar, is choosing to report, things that are a year, 2 years old, cosas que son que tienen una ancianidad de 1 o 2 años, comentarios que son casi intencionalmente, por lo menos conmigo fue así, conmigo fue que casi una broma, que la frase elegida a través de la cual reportarme, nada serio que vos decís, uy, no puedo creer que dije eso. No, son casi como que llega al límite de lo que podría ser considerado una violación de la regla. These things that were chosen were said 2-3 years ago, and also what is peculiar is that they are they're not obvious transgressions of a rule. They are things that you could questionably say if they're really offensive or insulting in how they are, in what rule specifically they transgress. Let's say they call it hate speech, and it says es una sugerencia, maricón, which in colloquial Argentinian is like saying, it's like a friend saying to another friend, go on, fag, I didn't really mean it. You know, or don't be a fag, I didn't mean that. Okay, that's the context of that. This has to do with what I was saying before, that you can't really judge, when I was talking before about a problem that moralist, ethical, law judgments area that is arising or has been trying to develop in the internet is almost impossible, really, because there is no context connection between where your fingers go to type a letter, where between the letters that get put on the screen and the reason you actually intended to write that word. So you can't go after a person for their intentional malice or ill intention when all you have to go by are letters put on a screen. How can you possibly do that? It's anyways. That's the point I tried to make before. And as far as estaba hablando de lo absurdo que es esta nueva zona de juzgar, de reglas, de crear inclusive leyes moralistas con respecto al uso de la internet y lo que se escribe, cuando hay una desconexión total de lo que es el poner una letra del teclado sobre la pantalla a lo que hubiese sido tu real intención y motivación en efectuar esa acción contra una persona, que sería la zona donde se origina la ley. La ley está originada en la acción real, la acción física, fisiológica del ser humano en respecto a otra persona o contra otra persona. Ahora quieren aplicar el mismo sistema de intelectualidad moralista que son las leyes a la acción de escribir una palabra con el teclado. O sea, es algo que no se les ocurrió, parece todavía a la gente, de darse cuenta, ahí falta algo, ahí falta una conexión. ¿Cómo hace? Pero yo puedo agarrar y decir, sos un hijo de te voy a matar, te voy a colgar, y vas a ver, después voy a agarrar a tu abuela y a tu perrito y a todos, y los voy a hacer a todos pelota, y lo pones todo eso por escrito, y mientras te estás quedando de risa mirando a la pared. Y estas leyes nuevas pretenden, o estas reglas de Facebook, pretenden tomar esas palabras y tratarte o juzgarte según, como si eso hubiese sido realmente lo que la persona físicamente estaba efectuando, estaba contra otra gente, estaba haciendo. ¿Te das cuenta? Acá hay una separación, hay algo que no se colega, y sin embargo están tratando de ver qué hacen, casi desesperadamente, porque ya hay varias gente que ha ido a la cárcel seguramente por esto. Y bueno, como la cárcel en muchos países lo toman muy como si fuera, no sé, de un dibujito animado, no hay ningún tipo de freno que se esté aplicando a una barbarie semejante. Pero bueno, sin cambiar de tema, without changing the subject. El problema principal, the main problem is that the things that have been reported are old and outdated. If they're old and outdated, meaning that they were not only banal, like I just described, and really not offensive, but at the moment they didn't offend anybody, right? So what is the reason the rule in Facebook exists? It exists because at a moment somebody would be offended or hurt or scared or insulted or intimidated, and therefore Facebook attempts to stop that from happening, right? Now, you could argue the ridiculous argument that it is Facebook's place to be a mommy that slaps you on the face, on the hand, for the things that you've done maybe a week ago. Let's say somebody could catch it still to make it pertinent. And what do you want? He's trying to distract me. Hey, to make it pertinent. But when you take things that are a year old, something's weird. And when things get ignored at the same time, like I myself, like I described in the other video, um, have been called. I'm still like I'm suspended right now, and these guys continue. I see them because when you're suspended on Facebook, you can you can still see what's happening without being able to respond, right? So these guys continue to look for me. They continue to provoke me. Hey, pedophile Patricia, where are you? And stuff like that. And Patricia isn't is basically calling you now. If I said a homosexual, oh my God, civil rights activists would be all up in it, right? But if I say anyways, so I define this and a pedophile. So I look at I think I analyze how I feel about it. I feel offended by somebody calling me Patricia, you woman, right? Aren't you? If a woman is called a man, doesn't she get offended? Okay. And then I look at pedophile, and he shortens it pedo to make it to not complete the word. I don't know what's going on in Facebook. They only go. Do they have a mechanized system that if the word is incomplete, it doesn't get? If it's a mechanized system, how the hell can it be moral? Anyways, and I've been reporting him consistently so that I make my point to Facebook. You suspend me, and I respond them. I respond to them. I click the "you made a mistake" button, and I explain why. And I said, this is what you're suspending me for from 2 years ago, and look at what this guy is still doing every day. That's harassment. He's provoking me, he's provoking me to respond to. So then I respond. I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen already, where everything is fine and copacetic. Nobody's insulting anybody in these groups, and all of a sudden one of these guys start escalating, calling me, a fag, a criminal, a drug addict, this and that, whatever. And so then they hit a nerve with something, and I go. And as soon as I lost it, I said something. I don't know, because I'm never really like disgustingly offensive. I get angry and I start building up, and I end up saying something that seems very aggressive. Usually, it's how I would define it, is excessively aggressive, but it's not really disgustingly offensive or insulting. Anyways, but I finally say something, and wouldn't you know that I get suspended for a month immediately after these guys built up the provocation for a few hours. So this is a problem with Facebook, is that as far as this area goes, I've been finding out other problems as I'm investigating, trying to learn how to use YouTube, and I'm watching all the videos now about how to use. I've also looked at videos that speak of what problems there are with YouTube, with Facebook, and I've discovered a whole level of things that nobody's using in these groups that I know. Likes, and how many likes, and like factories, and all this stuff. It's amazing. But one of the problems is that they are attempting to make a human moralistic environment of surveillance or of vigilance through mechanical protocol or something. So what happens? This is obviously, if you have a little bit of a less than benevolent intention, and there's a situation of groups divided in two camps. The Argentinians pro discussion of the sovereignty issue and the English that are just want the Argentinians to shut up so that they can continue finalizing their expansion onto the South Atlantic. You're going to have more of an ability because you're going to have more of an ability to succeed in destroying than succeed in building constructiveness. this has to do with human nature. When we are evil or aggressive, fighting or destructively self-preserving, we kill in order to survive, in other words, the mind thinks a certain way. It's quicker, it thinks faster on its feet, and it directly, immediately finds what is most effective in destroying or succeeding. When the mind is geared towards constructiveness and good, it immediately becomes expansive, much more considering of all people, slower, greater, more encompassing of the greater truths, but it's a slower, fast-moving thing that cannot deal with slow-moving thing that cannot deal with aberrations or obstacles or in poking, and it's something that is very gentle and big. This is the benevolent side of the human psyche. So if you have a Facebook group that has more or less this distributed onto its two camps, and on top of it, the ones that would basically, the Argentinians, they say the islands are Argentinian, but if the islanders or the British turn around and said, okay, maybe we were being greedy, how can we fix this? The Argentinians are the ones that would be more willing to say, okay, we can split them, we can, we just wanted you to be decent about this. That's what would happen. Even though they're sounding like, Malvinas, Argentinas, and da, da, da. Whereas the British side, they don't want to hear anything that is a compromise or anything that justice would vaguely echo apostle, anything that would not mean forget this ever happened, forget that there is a dispute. We just want them out of the picture. That's so. Unfortunately, we can say that these two camps are occupied by more positive and more negative. And if you add to this, okay, so some people might think that's just my opinion. I would invite them to prove to me the opposite of what I just said. Okay, the opposite. Say, prove to me, and if you prove it once or twice that it's the opposite, that means that I was wrong. That it's actually in the middle somewhere. Okay. What was I getting at? What was I getting at? I can't remember what I was getting at. So that's it. This is. I ended up saying it in English. It's too hard to go back and forth. But I am going to start now a channel in which this was a summary, sort of what's messed up about Facebook in reality. There is something strange. I don't know if it's being manipulated from the outside or the inside, how I said before. But that the rules and reporting system is failing. It's not working for what it is supposed to do. Is obvious because these people are just. All you have to, if you were I invite anybody to turn on several screens. And there's like several of these groups. There's like, but 3 or 4 of them are where this is happening. Where there's usually the same people, and the manner in which they treat each other is the same. The Argentinians are a certain way, and look at them, spend a whole day looking at the activity of these groups, and you will be able to draw conclusions. One conclusion is that obviously the British are more aggressive. The Argentinians come in more wanting to reason, and then they kind of say, well, let's try this, and then let's try that, and they respond more aggressively. For example, the British are the ones that started glorifying war in these groups. These groups were about debate. They were about resolution. They were about talking about the conflict. And they start, look at our navy, look at our, these big ships, and how wonderful and glorious all our war victories are, And so the Argentinians were like, what the fuck, what's going on? And they then they started doing it themselves to whatever measure they can. We're brave, there are dynamics that you clearly see are happening. If you study the progression, like I'm saying, with several monitors on at once, all day long, you would see, for example, I got really upset one time because, they were calling Argentinians, it's like the kids fight, let's tell them that you're a little coward, a little sissy boy, and see if you stop bothering me then. And so they were going into calling the Argentinians surrender monkeys because they lost the war, because they waved the white flag, right? So they call them surrender monkeys and cowards. This I thought was very offensive. I never saw an Argentinian call them cowards, and I started thinking about this, about the deeper aspect of understanding this rationale. And so I realized, well, you know what? Really, the real cowards are the English, because they go and attack the Argentinians, for Christ's sakes. They had an army that was like 50 years behind, while the British have nuclear power, aircraft carriers, like United States, and they go and pick a fight with Argentina. They get there, and the Argentinians are like, oh my God, they're in their trenches, and they're obligated to be there. They have mandatory service with the occupying dictators, the junta of the time. They were had to be there, otherwise, they get whatever, thrown in jail. Not the British soldiers. They don't have to go fight the war if they don't want to. So I started thinking about this, and this is one of the times where I lose it, and I start becoming, with my language, more aggressive. And I said something to the effect of, I started proving why the actual cowards are the ones that go fight the Argentinians, who are not culturally. If you grew up in Argentina and you grew up at the same time in England or the United States, you would be able to affirm and assert that the average Argentinian does not grow up thinking about all the wars we fought and won, and we're going to get those bastards, those damn Chinese. Nothing like this is part of their culture. They're thinking war is a foreign thing. It's something they do in the Northern Hemisphere. It's not, they went through a lot of terrible stuff, and they study their own bloody, horrible wars during colonial periods and the time that their countries were taking shape 200 years ago. But modern day, at least in 1982, Argentina, still differently, but pretty much today still, are not a people that grow up recounting their victories and Hitler and this and that all day long. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but to make the point. And so you can imagine that these soldiers are thrown in the Malvinas, and the realization that this is a really advanced, technologically superior army, that they're merciless, that they'll come into your trenches and cut your guts open, is very much more real and threatening in their psychology than the opposite, the inverted case, that the British soldiers fearing that the Argentinians are going to come in. No, if we think of the social psychology of each of these two people, and what they could possibly, any average Argentinian or any average British soldier in their respective trenches are seeing and considering, and how they're viewing the opposite soldier, you can see two different archetypes of personalities. And so I thought it was the case that I defended the Argentinians before such harassment, calling them cowards, calling them surrender monkeys and all this stuff in these groups. And so I made an intellectual point on how, no, actually it is you guys who are the cowards, because it's like taking candy from a crying baby or something, which is offensive to Argentinians, if I said it that way, of course. So it was a little difficult, because it is only human and natural that we would want to hold ourselves with a pride before defeat, and it's not only a necessary thing, but it's almost healthy that we stay together, we stay integral in ourselves, and stand on the courage that we had, because indeed the Argentinians, you could argue, were more courageous than the British. So when I was making these points, immediately this one person, I called it Britain's war of shame, or most shameful war. And I kind of sounded like I was threatening to coin this, to make this a term that I was going to proliferate on the internet. And one of these guys that are nuts, immediately he systematically takes the things that I say and turns them around and tries to prove the opposite, to try to win the point. It's like a strategy. It's like a combative strategy. You take what the enemy has focused on and made as a good advance, or a good incisive strike forward, and you reflect it back and throw it right back at them on the same spot. And that's what they were doing, and others were doing the same thing. This is like almost like training, like they learn how to do this in the military. And this is another thing I wrote to Facebook about. I said, this is totally unfair. The Argentinians are trying to speak to them in their language, which means they have to struggle and have to wait and have to try to interpret, and everything is slower. And like an avalanche, the English just overwhelm them in their language, and they take advantage of that situation instead of it's almost like once they got you down, they don't leave. They just kind of like pounds on you. I wrote about the sociological situation. I wrote Facebook about this. I sent them letters, and I don't understand why they don't respond, because these are very good, important, valid points. That creating, one thing is selling an item on Facebook. Another thing is talking about save the dolphins in the Faroe Islands and in Japan, by the way. But when you create groups that have to do with sovereignty and political pride and things that matter about territorial issues and disputes, and you have camps populated by the respective citizens of these two countries, that would be, you have another kind of social network situation, which is very different, and they should be responsible for that. It's not, if they're responsible for this obsession with finding pedophiles, and having to do with the Catholic Church, and what else? There's a few things that they obsess about, but then something like this, which is 100 times more important to the world, they don't know what to do with. They don't look at it. They don't deal with it. And so I wrote to them about it, and I said, if you allow in one of the, as if there were a category for these kinds of groups, I said to Facebook, and you have one camp, in this case a British camp, of this matter between two countries, populated in Facebook, in the groups, by men that are of military training, military career, military background, arguing against, normal people. The Argentinians in this case are, just guys that are into it, because Malvinas, Falklands, is is different in Argentina as it is in Britain. In Argentina, it is something that you'll find on the street. It's something that has always been part of going to school and talked about in different levels, different venues. Uh, the conflict with Britain, where and the islands and so forth. But in Britain, it's something that until the war, nobody knew about. That they even had these, the Queen had these islands down there, and then they don't know. They kind of start off by already seeing it as one of our colonies, one of the problems with one of our colonies. So it's not something. It's a popular. No, they're not. Technically, they try to not change it from colony to. Okay, I'm not going to get into that right now, but British overseas territory. Um, so what you have is people that, hey, let's talk about this. You guys, they tell them what they know about history. The Argentinians. But on the other hand, you have the minds of people that have a military background that are thinking logistically how to confront this social network situation, how to use it, how to use Facebook instrumentally to win the confrontation, and the reasoning they have, and the manner in which they, with their manners, the manner in which they treat you with their manners, and the way they go about the arguments are of this nature, of a military background, kind of about half of them, more or less, which is a lot. It's a strong. Sometimes in some groups, sometimes it was like 2/3. And what we have is a lot of the, if you count the group members as one thing, but if you see who is actively participating all day long, it would seem sometimes that it was all of them were military personnel. This is what I'm trying to say. Where the Argentinians, none of them, hardly any of them. There is one group. There are a couple of groups in which that are populated by people of military background, Argentinians of military background, but they're different nature. They're not combative, debating argument groups. They're for Argentinians. They go there to gather and to share their stories, talk about their lives and their families, and then they, the Malvinas forever, Argentinian, whatever. But it's not in a context of encountering British that come to fight them. It's not that kind of group. Where these groups, where there is argument and confrontation, are populated by an aggressive militant mentality on the British side with military background to whatever percentage or distribution, and none, because the Argentinian military background people basically are too mature to go in at it, to deal with this kind of mean, sparring, childish, insolent kind of interaction. They're not interested. There's one or two I've seen. They don't care to really participate all that much. So this is one condition that I thought was very, very unfair as far as communications. Technically, the ability to succeed equitably in a fairly and truthfully in a communications venue, or in other words, the efficacy of communications was completely non-existent, destroyed by this condition of two different types of members in these groups. I thought this was really important, and I wrote to Facebook twice about it. Nothing, and I continue to get suspended. I continue to get suspended for something I said 2-3 years ago. Anyway, so we've seen this. The Argentinians also are the ones that fight the most die-hard ones, end up working the nerves of whoever they are, wherever they are, and are also getting routinely regularly suspended in a row, one time after another, one time after another. So there's a corruption aspect. I took an hour almost, 35 minutes to get to what I was expanding into. The corruption aspect is that Facebook should say, if you're going to name a group something, that's what you should use it for. If you're going to name it debate, argument over the Falkland Malvinas conflict, that's what you should be doing in it. Not turn it into a place to demoralize Argentinians, fight, slander, pick on people, bully them, create groups to make fun of them and mock them like they did to me. The British created a well, I'm sorry. If that sounds, how else should I call them? How else should I refer to that group of people? The English speaking, some of the English speaking members of the other camp in the, come on. Anyways, created a group to mock me, to actually put pictures of me wearing with a Photoshop makeup on, and they post pictures with some of the guys. They Photoshop girls' dresses and put makeup on and stuff. They really try to attack at the personal level. This is what is really wrong, in fundamentally and essentially, is that they predominantly the British as so far as this point, it is only the British that attack at a personal level by name. You who are okay, in these groups, which are supposed to be about debating a territorial argument. The Argentinians don't do that. Very, very seldomly have I seen that guy is he's a charlatan. Don't listen to him. They try to mimic them. They don't know what to do, because since the purpose of the groups was to discuss the territorial argument, and that is not what is being done. They make it about a fight. Then they just are lost. They can't follow a course of any kind. They just continue to stay, hang on, and stay on and try to go somewhere eventually, at some point somewhere where that is not seen at the moment. And so was I, until now my suspension is going to be over in 30 days. I'll be back, and probably will be suspended again. So what I decided to do is change my venues, and I'm trying to, estoy tratando de juntarme con otros que quieran llevar esto a otro lado, a otro nivel, con otro foco, con otro tipo de ¿cómo se dice en castellano? Con otro tipo de encuadratura, no el combate que han creado los ingleses en el grupo, sino que donde podamos desarrollar junto a otros que también se han adherido a ser constantes con sus grupos, y que yo admiro mucho a usted, sí, usted sabe que hablo de usted, porque se ha mantenido con ese grupo muy constantemente, y creo que podríamos dirigirnos a otro campo. Estoy tratando de desarrollar un canal donde podremos vení, saluda a todos, donde estemos, donde nos concentremos en lo que es la parte desarrollo de propuestas, ¿qué? ¿Qué? ¿Eh? ¿Qué pasa? Desarrollo de propuestas, como si fuésemos una autoridad gubernamental, como si fuésemos una oficina puesta en el gobierno que prepara presentaciones para presentar ante las Naciones Unidas, o ante el gobierno británico, o ante los isleños, o ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia, o sea, un nivel bien elaborado y dejar esta situación que han, han logrado, han ganado la batalla de destruir los grupos de eh, argumentación sobre la disputa territorial en Facebook, en Facebook. Así que nada. Bueno, 40 minutos, increíble. Me pregunto si alguien se habrá quedado a ver todo. Bueno, gracias. Chao, Kalele. Thanks for listening. And I think that pretty much summarizes why I'm going to dedicate myself to developing a channel. Creo que esto resume bien por qué me voy a dedicar ahora a crear un canal para, para continuar con lo que estábamos haciendo, lo que queríamos hacer en algún momento al principio, muchos muchos que se han ido de los grupos y poder de alguna manera en otro formato continuar. Gracias.